Jeffery Simmons got the bag. What does that mean for the defensive tackle market? Odell Beckham, well, he's a Raven. What does that tell us about Lamar Jackson's future in Baltimore? It's a busy Monday here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month.
Joe, we had some self-discovery of the defensive tackle market over the weekend with the Jeffery Simmons mega contract. Nothing blows up a good galaxy brain quite like a 4-year, $94 million contract extension. You know, we had a couple galaxy brains in the past 7 days in the build up to this contract extension about the Titans and where they are and they traded A.J. Brown. They're in the rumor to be looking for quarterbacks. Kevin Byard was apparently on the market. Could they move Simmons and not pay him? What's the cost or what's the price? Well, it's all moot now because Jeffery Simmons is going to be the keystone and cornerstone of that Titans defense through whatever transition the team undertakes over the next couple of seasons.
My first prevailing thought with this extension is this is absolutely a statement move from their new general manager, Ran Carthon, right? First year on the job, just got hired a few months ago. And this is a statement. And I think part of the reason we allowed ourselves to have some of those galaxy brain conversations about Jeffery Simmons and potentially being traded is because of the recent history with the Tennessee Titans and their draft picks and just not a whole lot of guys being brought back and guys getting cut, not being given second contracts. You go back through guys like Corey Davis, Jack Conklin, Adoree Jackson, just straight up cut. He's a good starter in the league. Jonnu Smith, not brought back, right? There was this long cycle of just not a whole lot of traction with Tennessee keeping their own. And Ran Carthon comes in there and says, you know what? If you go out and you perform, you got a long future here in Tennessee. We're going to pay you a market deal. Jeffery Simmons absolutely went out there and earned it. And I think this is a good signal to the locker room moving forward that if you get drafted here and you develop, we are going to keep you. And I think that was a big message sent by Ran Carthon in his early months here as the GM of the Tennessee Titans.
So let's talk about Simmons and what we know about the deal. He'll turn 26 this summer. It's a 4-year, $94 million extension on top of the 1-year, $10.7 million that he was already scheduled to have as the 5th-year option this year. So technically speaking, this is a 5-year, $104.7 million contract with a $24 million signing bonus, $66 million in guaranteed, an annual average salary of $23.5 million. That's number 2 on the defensive tackle market. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves with the defensive tackle market, but just acknowledging that's number 2 APY behind 1 Aaron Donald. Okay, so there's Aaron Donald and everybody else, and it's been that way. And Aaron was getting 50% more than the next highest defensive tackle coming into this cycle. So from a cap perspective for Tennessee, $24 million signing bonus, when you transpose that against he was scheduled to get $10.7 million, you can now take the 10.7 and make it a part of the $24 million signing bonus, and you can prorate that out across the next 5 seasons. So I would expect the Titans have saved about $4.5 million in salary cap this year getting the contract extension done, which will be important when we talk about the defensive tackle market and players like Quinnen Williams and Christian Wilkins and potentially Ed Oliver, whether that comes from Buffalo or somebody else, because I know he feels like the one who's kind of had some trade rumors floating around this offseason. So that's just kind of from a big picture perspective. Simmons gets paid. The Titans save money in 2023 against the cap. He gets more than a 2x pay raise in the process. Number 2 APY for defensive tackles and $66 million in guaranteed. That's a strong number. That's over 2/3 of the money in the deal is guaranteed money.
Yeah, that was something that stood out to me as well. That's a large percentage of guaranteed money. I think it makes sense, though. Simmons, you don't really have any questions about him being a cornerstone for your organization moving forward. I mean, All-Pro and Pro Bowler the last 2 seasons. One thing that I love about him is he's playing a ton of snaps, north of 80% of the defensive snaps the last 3 seasons for Tennessee. Yeah. And I think
he's the number 1 defensive tackle in snaps last year. He was like 1,027 snaps or something like that he played last year.
So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck here for a player like you mentioned. He's entering his age 26 season. I think is it July he turns 26.
Yeah.
So this is a fresh 26-year-old defensive tackle. So there's really not a whole lot I think to come into this from and say, you know what, I got questions about what they did here. Right, everything kind of adds up to me. I think what on top of what I had to share about Rand Carthon, and I think this being a strong message, is I look back at that Tennessee Titans 2019 draft class, and Kyle, John Robinson knocked it out of the park. The problem is, well, let me tell you the names here, and it'll be quite obvious what the problem is. At number 19, they picked Jeffery Simmons. At number 51, they picked A.J. Brown. At number 82, they picked Nate Davis. 116, Amani Hooker. 168, DeAndre Walker, and 188, David Long. You've already lost 3 starters.
Yeah.
You've already lost 3 starters that you drafted: A.J. Brown, Nate Davis, David Long. Those are all good players. And so locking up Jeffery Simmons was critical because, I mean, you did the thing with Amani Hooker. You've already taken care of him, but that would have been a tough pill to swallow to lose another good starter from that draft class.
Yeah, because you think about Tennessee, right? And it's like you've already acknowledged kind of this trend of, it's almost more of a, I don't want to say a college program from a team building standpoint, but college programs are built because you have guys for 4 or 5 years and then they leave. Mm-hmm. And then you have to constantly reload, where being able to fly a little closer to the sun and retain your top end talent, and they've done that with Kevin Byard, right? They've now done that with Jeffrey Simmons. You mentioned Amani Hooker as well. Like, there's players that they've done that with, but the percentage of players that have become quality or adequate level starters at the NFL level who have bounced is part of the reason why Tennessee is in the shoes that it's in now, where they're looking at a transition, right? Because if you extrapolate that across the last 3 seasons, you mentioned a name like Jack Conklin is just another example, right? Like, that progressively happening and not getting second contracts within your team creates more needs. And I think that's really interesting when you consider how John Robinson did it for quite a while, which was always drafting for need. Mm-hmm. Say, oh, we're going to sign, we're just going to draft a guy.
Yeah.
Well, you better bat 1,000.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, especially when you look at some of the things that he went out to try to figure out. I think a lot about wide receiver. I think a lot about edge, right?
Yeah.
This need for another edge rusher, and really just, I mean, look at this resume of Jadeveon Clowney not really working out, Bud Dupree, Tok McKinley. There's another name that is Vic Beasley, right? None of these guys really wound up being anything, and then you traded 2 and a 4 for Julio Jones. That doesn't come to fruition, right? It just felt like some of those key components of the roster to build up around this Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, we're going to pound the rock, run the football, be sound on defense. There wasn't enough of those X factors sprinkled in at some of those premium positions to get them over the hump, and that's why I think they had a really good run, but it never really resulted in them getting, winning the AFC and, of course, playing in the Super Bowl.
Right, and that's kind of the cost of doing business with a non-elite quarterback team life cycle, right? You got 2-3 years, build it up. You hit some good drafts. You have a surplus of assets. Then you got the next 4, 5, 6 seasons to make the right moves. Mm-hmm. And then the wheels fall off the bus and you do it all over again. And that's it's not the norm, or it's not the expectation for any fan base, because they've seen, football gods, I see what you've done for Kansas City and I see what you've done for New England, and I want that for me, right?
Sure. Yeah. No
Be
doubt.
content with a different way to get it done, right? Like there's other
Right.
ways that you can do
You
this.
have to.
And I think this is kind of a really fun era of the NFL in general, because we have seen this changing of the guard, right? And the AFC side of things, especially, like, yeah, you do have Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, you do have Josh Allen. Yeah, you do have Joe Burrow. But, like, it's really competitive, right? Like, there's a bunch of teams that you feel like could get hot at the right time of year and make a run. Like, they're, what, six, seven teams?
Sure. Yeah,
You know?
no question. Right.
With just the caliber of the totality of their roster. Yeah. And it's like, dude, that's what the Rams and the Bengals did when they were 4 seeds.
Yeah.
They got hot at the right time of year.
Baltimore,
and they made a run. Yes.
Yeah.
So it happens. Give yourself a chance. And it's all of the AFC representative in the Super Bowl was Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, or Peyton Manning for like a decade. Or Joe Flacco, right? Like 4 quarterbacks in a decade. I think we're going to see a little bit more. I think Kansas City's going to have plenty to say about the next decade of winning the AFC.
Well, we'll see. It's been a Mahomes-Burrow situation for what? The last few. The last four have been either Mahomes or Burrow. So we'll see if anyone else could crash that party. I'm certainly got my fingers crossed about one particular guy.
Yeah, me too.
So we're going to talk more about defensive tackles in the market here in just a moment. But first, this show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and changing. In fact, I was actually talking with my 18-year-old niece the other day about how differently I saw things at her age compared to even 25 or 30 years old. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way that we do until we talk things through. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
Okay, Joe, so we got to talk about the defensive tackle market in its entirety. And I know we mentioned $66 million in practical guarantees for Jeffery Simmons. That is just off the very quick glance amongst the top contracts at the defensive tackle position. That's the third highest practical guaranteed as far as percentage of money, second highest raw total. So Chris Jones had 75% of his 4-year, $80 million deal. That was practically guaranteed at 75%. Aaron Donald was fully guaranteed, practically guaranteed. And then Jeffery Simmons at 70% of his 4-year, $94 million contract extension is guaranteed money. So some big dollars. Obviously, from an APY perspective, I think there's a lot. There's a couple of patches within the top 15 that I think you're going to start to see some players fill in the blanks on. Do you want me to read through the top values?
You can. I have the 10 right here, but go ahead and put them out there.
Aaron Donald 31.67, Jeffery Simmons 23.5, Daron Payne 22.5, DeForest Buckner 21, Javon Hargrave 21, Chris Jones 20, Jonathan Allen 18, Vita Vea 17.75, Kenny Clark 17.5, and then Grady Jarrett at 16.8.
So, first of all, can we just put Aaron Donald to the side, because I mean, it's not the same.
It's not a comparable.
Yeah, we're not in the same solar system here, and it makes sense, right? Aaron Donald, the historic run, he's way ahead of everyone else. But this position group as a whole, was kind of late to the party when it comes to a boom, right? And we've seen this with some other position groups lately, like tight end, even corner over the last few years. They've really kind of caught up. Linebacker certainly happening as well. And really even this offseason, right, before the Simmons deal, which, again, we're throwing Aaron Donald out, and Simmons became the highest paid defensive tackle in the league, average per year, not name Aaron Donald, right on the heels of Daron Payne doing the same thing at 21.5, and Javon Hargrave coming in at 21 as well. So there's been some big dollars handed out to defensive tackles recently. And the timing is pretty fascinating because of this 2019 defensive tackle class that has been really, really good. And Jeffery Simmons, the first to get paid, and good for him. And I have a thought as to why, but I want to acknowledge some of the names before we dig into them. Quinnen Williams with the Jets, Christian Wilkins with the Dolphins, Dexter Lawrence with the Giants, Ed Oliver with the Bills. Jeffery Simmons is first. And I think that makes a lot of sense for him to be first for Jeffery Simmons because, again, throwing aside Aaron Donald, I think Quinnen was going to get the most money here. And for at least a moment in time, Jeffery Simmons can say that he was the highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL, not named Aaron Donald. Good for him. And obviously the no state income tax thing in Tennessee, that's probably great for Jeffery and all the wealth that he's able to generate for his future.
What's fun is you mentioned Simmons and you mentioned Javon Hargrave, and Deron Payne re-signed in Washington as well. But if you strike the deals out that were done this offseason, and we're omitting Aaron Donald, because we've already acknowledged Aaron Donald's in a different stratosphere, your top 2 contracts at this position were signed in 2020.
Wow.
With DeForest Buckner reset it at 21 and Chris Jones at 20, and Kenny Clark in the same year got 17.5. So that was your previous reset, was 3 years ago for 21, 20, and 17.5. And
when
now
was John Allen? Do we know that? Because he's at 18.
John Allen was in 2021.
Okay.
So it was like he was a part of the beneficiary of the last reset 3 years ago for the top of the market. It was him and Vita Vea in the same offseason got 18 and 17.25. So that's kind of been and you mentioned this class of 2020, the guys in the next couple of years, understanding that there's not a lot of really good draft classes at interior defensive tackle after 2020, I expect the top of this market is going to be stagnant for a couple years in the same way that it was last time.
After this boom,
after the guys from the 2020 class get done, I think you spend a couple of years where the guys who are getting top dollars in their respective years are filling in the blanks between the numbers that we're establishing right now. Yeah.
So you want to look at these guys, start with maybe Quinnen Williams. I think that's such an easy conversation. He's a monster, right? He's going to get paid more than Jeffery Simmons, and he should. And I think they're both awesome players. But I think this is probably your next one. I think he comes in at 24 and a half, maybe 25 a season. I mean, just what he showed last year, the trajectory. I don't like playing against Quinnen Williams, man. He's awesome.
He's a game wrecker inside. There's no question.
Yeah. Yes.
And is he a better pass rusher than Jeffery Simmons? I think they're close.
Yeah, but I think they're close. But
I think Quinnen's got just a little bit more twitch, as evidenced by the fact that he was the second overall pick in the draft. Like the physical talent has always been there for Quinnen Williams, and it was kind of slow getting him started. But the fact that he has lived up to that potential now, I think the only thing that might be restrictive to him is just how often they rotate on that Jets front with Robert Saleh. But it ain't stopping you from paying him because the evaluation's very straightforward.
Yeah, and I think it's Quinnen might be in a better scheme to rush than Simmons, right?
Yeah.
Simmons got to play a lot of 5, coming off the edge and looping.
Quinnen's a true 3 and firing off the ball and getting north. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty cut and dry. I think we both agree he comes in above Simmons, but
yes.
Okay.
And that's probably going to be like 23.6 or 23.75.
Oh, right? You think it's going to be by a hair?
The market's been set, right? Like I don't think you can really. Your negotiating ploy if you're Quinnen's team is talking about Aaron Donald, and if you're the Jets, it's okay. Well, let's not talk about Aaron Donald, and let's give you the number one. I don't think he's going to get 25. I'd say it's between 23.5 and 24 is what he gets.
Okay, I'll say 23.5 to 25. I mean,
okay,
sure,
you take the over on 24, make it fun.
Sure.
No Bill Bars here. Just
no Bill Bars.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
All right, so he was the first defensive tackle drafted, Quinnen Williams. The next one was Ed Oliver at number 9. And I think that this conversation is really different. I think I've well acquainted with Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver's a good NFL starting 3 technique. Is he a consistently dominant player? No. Right? I don't think he's in the same conversation as Simmons or Williams at all. I don't see him that way. Again, good starter. I think his lack of length is always going to be a challenge for him, right? He's got to work overtime to get off blocks. He gets off the ball hard.
I like that phrase. He's got to work overtime to get off blocks. For guys who don't have length and extension.
Yeah, he's got sub 32-inch arms.
Apologies.
It takes some time, man. He's explosive. He plays hard. For a smaller guy, that 280-something pound defensive tackle, you don't really see him getting blown off the ball, but getting off contact and making plays is prohibitive. And so I think that Ed Oliver is going to get paid. I don't know if it'll be by the Bills, but I think sometime in the next calendar year he's going to get an extension. But I think it's going to be somewhere in like the 10 to 14 range. I think about David Onyemata got like $12 million this past offseason. Sheldon Rankins came in around 10. I think he's in that conversation more so than touching what we're getting into here with the Simmons and the Williams type stuff.
Can you talk real quick about, and by the way, that's after I mentioned the last name we read was Grady Jarrett, and then it's Cameron Hayward at 16.4. Dalvin Tomlinson's the next highest at 14.25.
14.
So when you talk about those soft spaces to start plugging guys in, I think about 14.25, and then Reader's 13.25. And then Onyemata's
11.7.
11.67. Yeah. So, I mean, you have 5 players between 16 and 10.4. That's a very middle-classy kind of place to start interjecting. Can you talk just a little bit about, like, snaps for Ed?
60% guy. So the last 2 years, he's been, I think he went right at 50, 54, 58, 60, right? So he's just now pushing that 60%. Rotation-heavy defense for the Bills. And I think, obviously, the one thing that can really impact things for Ed is if he goes out and has a crazy good year in a contract year, right? That's certainly possible.
I think that probably puts him in the conversation to get the 15, 16.
Sure, if he goes out and puts up numbers, he can get on the higher end of that middle class. But north of 15, I think, I mean, I just don't think that's in the cards for him.
Christian Wilkins next.
Was he 12th pick?
13th pick.
13th pick.
Yeah.
So he's next.
So Christian
If
Wilkins.
you want the floor here, go ahead.
Yeah. So Christian Wilkins has, in the same way that Ed Oliver took some time to kind of find his footing, Christian Wilkins, when he first got into the league, kind of struggled with pad leveraging and consistency as far as pad level. He doesn't have the sack numbers. I get it. You're talking about these guys that are 8 to 10 sacks. But when I think about Christian Wilkins, he played in a gap control defense. He also played in a defense under Brian Flores and Josh Boyer that predicated a lot of its pass rush on identifying a particular gap and matchup that they wanted to isolate. And they run a lot of 2- and 3-man games. And when I think about Christian Wilkins, you're in a gap control defense, so a lot of your early passing downs, you're reading the block before you convert into your pass rush. And then on a number of your third down pass rush situations, you are the postman for the 2- and 3-man games where you are setting the pick for a looper to come behind you to try to manufacture free runs up the interior. So I think about Christian Wilkins and his sack numbers, and I don't think it should be restrictive, or you should look at his sack numbers and say, oh, well, he doesn't sack the quarterback, he shouldn't get paid top dollar. He's an elite player at this stage in his career. The last 2 seasons, he's been phenomenal. He played over 1,000 snaps defensively for the Dolphins, or over 1,000 snaps in total last year for the Dolphins as well. It was over 900 snaps defensively plus special teams. He plays on the punt team. I'm not paying him to play on the punt team, right? But I'm just giving you the full resume of who he is. He lock peaks and sheds at about as high of a level as any defensive tackle in the league right now. He made 92 tackles last year, 55 solo tackles. His range, his effort, his motor, and you're going to put him in a Vic Fangio defense where defensive linemen are now responsible for playing a gap and a half against the run, and you're more of an organic front-style pass rush as compared to we want you to lock, peek, and shed and diagnose the backfield and let the linebackers run free, or simultaneously we want you to slant and crash into the center's hip so that Jalen Phillips can come looping behind you and run free through the A-gap to get a hit on the quarterback. I think this is a player that is probably going to be negotiating for 20. I think the Dolphins will be angling for kind of that, what we said was the ceiling for Ed Oliver, and I expect them to fill in the blank between John Allen and who was the other name at 20? Chris Jones.
Chris Jones.
I think is where there's a $2 million void where there's nobody in there. And that's my expectation for where his dollars are going to fall.
So your range is 15 to 20 with Wilkins?
I think he's going to go between 18 and 20. Okay. I think the Dolphins are going to be angling for 15, and Christian in his camp are going to be angling for 20.
Yeah, I'm similar. I think high teens for Christian Wilkins is kind of where I'm expecting. If I'm him, I want 20. If I'm Christian Wilkins also, I might want to wait. I might want to wait and have the season. If I'm Miami, I want the deal done now.
Correct.
And that helps them in similar ways that you talked about with Simmons, and that they can get some cap relief now and lock in, obviously, a critical piece of their roster.
I guess what's unique about Miami is that they have the opportunity with the Byron Jones deal. They're going to get $13 million in cap after June 1st. So they might not need it unless there's somebody they want to sign in the meantime that they need to manufacture the $4 or $5 million in space for. So it would behoove the Dolphins exponentially to get this done before Christian Wilkins plays this year in Vic Fangio's system.
We'll see how that goes. There's interesting dynamics on both sides there. And then there's the whole bird in hand's better than two in the bush, right? I mean, there's a lot of money that's going to be offered to you, bud. It's hard that's got to be, I couldn't imagine saying no to like $18 million a year, man. That's crazy. But that's also not a world that I live in. So it's not really.
I'm not saying no to free lunch, right?
No, right. we are not the same. Yeah. What do you think about this for Christian Wilkins? One dynamic that's different from him than all these other players is the age factor, right? He's like 2 years older than these guys. He turns 28 in December.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think that's a huge, especially stylistically how he plays. I think he's going to be fine into like that 32 range for me. So I have no problem with like a 4-year deal for him. But I think it's just a layer. It's a worth mentioning layer, I think, in this entire picture as we consider this 2019 defensive tackle class. But I think we see him similarly in terms of valuation.
Yeah, I just, the little soft spot in me, I'd go to 19.5, right? Like I'd be willing to go that.
You're not going to let him go. Yeah. There's not a world where Christian Wilkins is not brought back.
This is the weird thing. They've really started. Zach Sealer just converted to Rosenhaus as his agent. Mm-hmm. And the Miami beat has kind of been talking about how they want to get a deal done with Zach Sealer too. Well, you've got Bradley Chubb. You're going to have to pay Jalen Phillips. You're talking about Christian Wilkins getting $18 to $20 million per season, and Zach Sealer right now is getting paid $3.5, and he's in a contract year as well.
Yeah, he deserves a bunch of money too, right?
Correct. He's a player that would go in that I am at a dollar range for me.
12, 13.
Yeah. So he's due for like $9, $10, $11 million raise per season. Mm-hmm. So I guess from the Dolphins' perspective, they'll have to, and I don't think they would do anything to move either one ahead of 2023, but I do think they're going to have to pick one.
You pick Wilkins, so right? You just have to.
I would, and it's a slam dunk, and I wouldn't think twice about it. And I love Zach Sealer.
Sure.
But if I had to pick one, I would pay Christian. But I do think that's a storyline here as far as like, if they don't get it done and they play it out, that there's a world where we say, okay, well, we'll pay Sealer, and Christian's priced himself out of our market because of the winning window that they have, and you would do like a tag and trade type scenario or something like that. And I'm not advocating for that by any means, but just acknowledging all the avenues they have.
I think there's something for Zach Sealer in Miami, but he's probably going to have to make some concessions. And I think you have two great bargaining chips on your side of things. If you're Miami, first of all, obviously you get to play in South Florida, right? Everybody loves that.
Yep.
And there's no state income tax, so right, like we can pay you less, but you're probably going to take home,
your take home pay will be more.
Right. So that's something to be mindful of. And also like, hey, like we're the team that unlocked you, bro. Like you want to continue to be part of this. You love it here. We love you. We just like, hey, like it can't. Like we don't have enough.
Right. Can we go higher? Can we go higher guarantees and give you 10 as compared to lower guarantees? You go somewhere else and pay taxes and get 13.
That's the kind of stuff Miami's got to tap into. Dexter Lawrence, we can both spike the football here because we were told he was just a big slob nose tackle that can't play. And
Downright
anybody
lies.
that watched him at Clemson knew that wasn't the case. This is kind of fun, right? Both these guys, those guys are college teammates, Lawrence and Wilkins.
Yeah.
Now they're going to get paid mega dollars, right? Good for them. Lawrence was, really just a huge year this past year with Wink Martindale. The sack production upticked. He's always been disruptive. The run defense has been there. He's angling himself, I think, to be kind of in that Hargrave conversation. Is he a younger Hargrave? Is that probably the way that he's negotiating? Is he somewhere? Is he Deron Payne money? Is he low 20s? That's kind of where I'm thinking for Lawrence.
I just want to beat Vita Vea.
Oh, he will. He will beat Vita Vea at 17 3/4.
Right. But you talk about the guys that are in that stratosphere, and Kenny Clark's what? Because Kenny Clark's another one.
17.5.
If I'm Dexter, 17.5?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to beat Vita Vea. As the nose, and he's a pass rush disruptive nose, and Hargrave's been that to some degree as well. I think that's the right names to invoke here as far as comparables, because whether it's Wilkins or Chris Jones being able to play on the 5 at times, or Jeffery Simmons being able to play on the 5, or Aaron Donald's in a different stratosphere, right? Like, you think about the guys that live in the A and the B gaps and take a higher percentage in the A gaps. It's Vea, Clark, and Lawrence. And I want to be creme de la creme of those guys. I just want to make sure that's where I end up landing.
If I'm Dexter Lawrence, I'm saying John Hargrave at 30-something years old just got 21 a year. You better give me that. That's what I'm thinking he's angling towards. Deron Payne even 23.5 or 22.5.
1,600 defensive snaps the last 2 seasons.
That's a lower amount. What's the percentages there? Do you have that?
82% this year.
Whoa. He played 82% of snaps?
82% of defensive snaps last year, yeah. And then 65% in 2021.
Dude, that's a ton.
Yeah.
In Sean McDermott land, 60% is a ton. These guys pushing 80. I have no idea what that means. I'm used to like every 3 snaps, a whole different defensive line being on the field.
But dude, that's 3 of the 4 names that we're mentioning: Dexter Lawrence, Christian Wilkins, and Jeffery Simmons.
That's where they live.
Those guys are high volume snap guys. And it makes sense. If you're going to pay that kind of money, pay a guy that's going to be on the field.
I got to look up Quinnen. Quinnen is 65% this past year, so he's been between 57 and 65%.
Right, but again, that's the Saleh San Francisco rotational
Saleh
front
doesn't want
ideology.
his guy. He doesn't want him playing more than 3 snaps in a row.
Right.
He doesn't want to play more than 40 snaps a game.
Right. So I think that's the thing that I think that's the thing with the negotiation with the Jets. Like I said, that kind of can end up working against him a little bit, and why I don't think he's going to blow Jeffery Simmons' numbers out of the water, because they're going to say, dude, like, you're playing 2 out of every.
Like, I don't get to pick what snaps I'm on the field. Y'all are the one telling me come in and out.
Correct. I don't disagree. I'm just saying I think that's part of what the Jets are going to present the argument with. Hey, look, let's talk FanDuel and then switch gears here. Yeah.
Let's go from big people to little people here. But first, grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays, they are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. Whether you like Aaron Judge to hit some home runs, a pitcher to go over on strikeouts, you can build a single game parlay with your favorite matchup of the day. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
This Odell contract is insane on several fronts.
Really? You think it's insane?
Did you see how they structured it?
15 guaranteed, worth up to 18.
No. That's not what I'm talking about. You see the void money?
Oh, no. What is that? I didn't see that part.
What do you think his cap hit this year is? On a 1-year, $15 million guaranteed contract.
I walked into this conversation thinking it was 15 guaranteed.
It's not.
Okay.
Well, it is 15. It is 15 guaranteed.
So what is his cap hits this year is going to be 4.5, and there's 3 void years.
They put 4 void years on the back end of the deal.
Jeez.
His cap hit this year is $3.9 million,
Jeez.
and he will carry an $11 million dead cap hit in 2024.
Wow, this is all for Lamar, right?
Yes.
So I knew it was all for Lamar. I didn't know that piece of it, and now it's just this is what we have to do to get to Lamar to come back and play for us.
Right, because they were very quick to tweet out Odell and Lamar on the FaceTime with the screenshot when Odell.
Were.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so that changes a lot of what I had to say because I came into this conversation,
ready to applaud the Ravens for getting a wide receiver.
Yeah, because I thought the sticker shock, I'm like, oh, this is a lot of money. And then I'm like, no, it's not. He's the 23rd highest paid wide receiver. He's in the same stratosphere as Cortland Sutton and Allen Robinson. I'm like, okay, that seems kind of appropriate to me. I can live in that world. I didn't know they did all that and really kind of boned themselves in future years to have Odell for one season coming off of an ACL tear. This guy hasn't really had meaningful production in a while.
Thank you. And that's what I was going to say. What about the fact that he's played less than 1,000 snaps in the last 3 seasons combined?
We know what he can do, right? Let's not disrespect Odell. He's a good player.
What is Odell Beckham now? What is Odell Beckham now?
We don't know. We don't know. He didn't play football.
It's the same thing with the Cam Newton coming out. There's not 32 guys better than me. Dude, it was Shannon Sharp just dunked all over him. He's like, Cam last won a game as a starter in 2020. He man made the Pro Bowl since 2015. This is the same thing. I don't know who Odell Beckham is. Is Odell Beckham just a shiny name that everybody... clearly it was because ESPN was so eager to put the photoshops with Odell in the Jets jersey and talk about him and Aaron Rodgers and are they the favorites to win the East? And Odell was supposed to go visit the Jets today.
He said nope.
Yeah, I wouldn't have risked it either because by the time my agent hung up the phone and told me Baltimore was offering me $15 million guaranteed, I'd be petrified that by the time I called them back, they'd change their mind.
Did you see the one comment from Odell about, because there's the rumor about him wanting 20 and then he's like, yeah, that's not true, but I also 4 ain't going to get it done.
Right.
I bet you I bet you the Bills and Chiefs are offering like $4 million. It's like, hey, you want this?
Which quite frankly, with the quarterbacks that they have, they should be offering him that. And I think Baltimore's in an awkwardly different situation because of the strife that exists between the team and Lamar, where you have to do something to move the needle to get him to want to play for you. And doing this and getting Odell to a point where you gave him enough where the answer is yes, no questions asked, was what you had to do. But boy, oh boy. What happens if it doesn't work out with Lamar? What happens if Lamar plays this year and then goes his own separate way anyway? Well, I guess that's when you would want to carry the $11 million dead cap hit.
So is this a signal to you that Baltimore's all in on 2023?
Probably.
And then we'll see.
Yeah, we're gonna do what Dallas did with Dak Prescott. We're gonna do with Lamar, and we're gonna buy ourselves another year with a franchise tag, and then we're either gonna pay him like Dallas did, or we're not. And we're gonna cost ourselves more money if we sign him, which is okay if you don't have that conviction. That's okay, but that's what they're doing here. That's what it tells me they're doing here.
I want to look at it through this angle because I feel like there's been so much conversation about Lamar, Baltimore, coaching, supporting cast. And let's work through this really quick. Can you tell me, is this good enough? Offensive coordinator Todd Monken.
Okay.
His receivers are now Odell Beckham, Rashad Bateman, and then this group of Devin Duvernay, James Prochet, Nelson Aguilar.
You need another player.
Better than it was, probably.
It's better than it was, but you need another player at wide receiver, especially because what if Odell's not Odell? What if Odell's not the Odell that you know? Then you need 2 players.
Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Charlie Cole are at tight end.
It's good.
Your starting O-line, Ronnie Stanley, Ben Cleveland, Tyler Linderbaum, Kevin Zeitler, Morgan Moses. We can go to war with that, right?
Yeah, we can make that work.
J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, Patrick Ricard at fullback.
Probably would like a little more reliability in your running back room.
I think that's fair. But are we down with this? Is there going to be commentary about the Ravens not giving Lamar what he needs to be successful?
I'm sure people are going to be ticked off when they draft a corner in the first round.
Well, their starting corners are
Marlon
Humphrey, Demarion Williams. They probably should think about it.
They should draft a corner. So what wide receiver can you add to the mix from this year's class that's going to make you feel really good about the group.
They're picking like 22, 23.
Yeah.
You see Jim Nagy's tweet this morning about Jackson
4 or
Smith
5
and
wide
Jigba.
receivers, but JSN's the consensus first-round grade.
That's the world I've been living in. It's like, to me, if it's a wide receiver in the first round, I feel like I can just get, you're going to talk about Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison. It's like, I don't know. I feel like those are the same as other players that can get on day 2. I've been thinking about that for a while now. So, and I think Jackson Smith and Jigba has, I think he'd be great for this offense. I think he'd be great for any offense.
He would be a great complementary. Look, and I know Duvernay and Prochet in stretches have been productive slot guys, right? But how much of that has been because they just don't have anybody else to throw the ball to on the outside?
It's true.
Like, being a productive player doesn't mean you're the answer at that spot. Somebody has to catch the football. And Mark Andrews ain't going to catch 250 passes a year.
No, he can if he wants to. For my dynasty team, nobody cares about your fantasy
Nobody cares.
team. I know that.
Literally no one cares about your fantasy.
Literally nobody. But you have to, right? You're programmed to say stuff like that.
I get it.
Part of the deal.
Yeah. I think they need one more passing game piece.
Ideally, yes. I think for the Ravens, like, isn't so much of their success this coming year going to be like, what do they get from Odafe Owe? What do they get from David Ajabo?
It's kind of a scary world to live in.
Yeah.
Because that's like, so you've got questions behind Humphrey at corner, and you have significant questions with your outside pass rush group.
I like your linebackers and safeties.
Right. They're the spine of their defense is very strong.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
But what you have on the perimeter defensively is going to define your season, in my mind.
And then there's that AFC North conversation between Baltimore, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. It's going to be a competitive division.
Highly competitive division, especially if Watson plays anything like Watson.
Cleveland's the total X factor.
Right, they could go 6-11, or they could go 11-6. I wouldn't be surprised either way.
One of those range of outcomes teams.
Yes,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I'll be interested. I think they'd probably, in a perfect world, Baltimore would add another wide receiver. They would add a starting caliber corner, and they would add
a backfield piece.
Because Dobbins in the contract year, and
dude, that's literally all they have under contract. Those three, it's Dobbins, Edwards, and Hill.
Yeah,
there's not another single.
It's a great year. They need a running back though.
For sure, they can find somebody.
They'll find a quality player in the middle rounds for sure.
Yeah,
maybe a developmental tackle. Or we'll see. A little bit.
Falele. We'll see.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Daniel Falele. Excuse me. Forgive me.
We'll see. I
feel better about tackle now. Okay, they can do this. I think they could successfully check a lot of boxes. We checked all our boxes, which means we're out of here. Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino, a Locked On NFL Scouting podcast with the Draft Dudes here on the Locked On Network. Your teams every day. We appreciate you guys checking out the show. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We hope you will come back and see us again tomorrow. Make it a great rest of your Monday. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace.